Something that you need to be really careful of is the zero value items. So you've probably heard this as gifts or samples, things that are given free of charge. Traditionally, in other countries, this is a practice that does not happen too often. The reason for that is say in the UK, if we were to give a laptop to an employee as a gift, that would be considered what's called benefit in kind. And as a result, they would need to pay the income tax on what would be the effect of their salary. So a £1,000 laptop or $1,000 laptop could actually end up costing something like, $1,500, $1,600 instead. So the practice doesn't take place very often in other countries. Here in Bahrain, there is no income tax, and the taxes are generally still very, very low. So what that means is at the moment, with no tax, someone with part of their business could buy a laptop and they could give it to any member of their family, because it makes no difference whether they give it from the business or they give it to themselves first and then pass it on. The divide between your business and your personal sort of expenses and costs is very, very small. Now, if we introduce VAT, if I was to go and buy a laptop and it costs $1,000, the VAT at 5% would be 50. As a VAT registered business, I would be able to recover that tax, and then if I gave that laptop to someone else, actually the cost to me has only been $1,000. So I'm giving that VAT back, and I'm then giving that laptop to someone else. So the authorities have said, no, you can't do that. If you're going to give it to someone, or you're not using that laptop as part of an economic activity within your business, then you have to make sure that the VAT is paid for. So what that means is that if you're going to give a laptop or any gifts to any employees, yourself or anybody, even a customer, you're going to have to make sure that you pay the VAT on it. So there's a couple of options for you. First of all, if you buy an item and you know you're going to give it away as a gift, don't recover the tax. So therefore, you've paid the VAT on it, you're not recovering it, the government gets their tax. Secondly, if you have a whole bunch of items, maybe promotional items, you could have 10,000 bottles of water that you're giving away or something like this. You can then identify what those 10,000 bottles are, find the value of them, and then create an internal tax adjustment for all of those bottles, and then you can give those bottles away free of charge because you have already accounted for the VAT. Finally, if you're giving gifts or you're giving a customer something free of value, so maybe they've bought a whole load of items and then you give them an item free of charge and you invoice them separately, you would then have to create a tax adjustment invoice just for that item. And what that normally means is that you will have to create a tax adjustment invoice, calculate the VAT, and then usually as a company you would swallow that VAT cost, because you wouldn't pass it on to a customer. You can, but most customers wouldn't be appreciative that you give them something and then say, oh, here's the VAT. Now, they're your sort of three options in reality. In practice, if you're giving away a lot of items, if you're a phone company and you're giving away free SIM cards, for example, what you want to do ideally is bundle them. If you can say, hey, buy two, get one free, create that as a single item in effect. The wording or the way on the invoice is, 3 items for the price of 2, and it's considered as one item. That's then a taxable event on its own right. You do not have to determine the VAT for the extra item. So if you are giving away free items, look at how you word them on your invoices, and you will potentially be able to include them as part of the standard offering of the other items you're selling, and therefore they won't actually be a cost. Alternatively, if you are, for example, installing a satellite service, you may have cable box free of charge, cabling free of charge, but the overall service on that one invoice will have service for installation, $1,000, therefore the tax we charge on $1,000, again, that's okay. So the problem is really only when you're giving away an item which is on its own, it's not part of something else. So anything that's free of charge, gifts, and even samples, make sure you get the correct advice on whether or not you have to create tax or the VAT on those items.